Part 13. Global Copy, My Talent is Called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 121. I have finished checking your sister's body. There are two pieces of news, one good and one bad. Which one do you want to hear first? In a luxurious room, Lu Wanyi, with a slight blush on her face, lay quietly on the bed and fell asleep peacefully. Next to her was the black charcoal head who transformed into a dog, loyally guarding her bed. Through the glass window outside the room, Lu Zioki glanced with a slightly worried look, turned his head hesitantly and asked the woman in front of him, then, should I hear the good news first or the good news first, bad news? This woman was tall, with a handsome face, and wore black-rimmed glasses. She was holding a box of instruments in her hand, holding the gloves she had just taken off with her other hand, looking at the young man in front of her with interest. This person is none other than Professor Wang Yanran, who came from the imperial capital. Well, let me tell you one by one. Wang Yanran had a very good attitude towards this young man, without any airs of a strong Sun Yao man. With her strength and background, the recent events in Chengdu cannot be hidden from her. Naturally, she knew that the strong man of the sun who single-handedly saved Rongcheng was the handsome young man in front of her who seemed a little embarrassed. And it seems that he is also her best friend, Zhao Xueqing's little boyfriend. Although Zhao Xueqing denied it no matter how she asked, it was hard to deceive someone with his eyes. Zhao Xueqing has never shown such concern and concentration when mentioning anyone. The good news is that your sister's condition is not considered an illness. Lu Zioki. Is this really good news? Isn't this considered a disease? Is your sister so weak? Besides, who cares if this is a disease? All I care about is whether it can be cured. The bad news is that although it is not a disease, if the condition continues to worsen, it can be fatal. Lu Zioki. I have confirmed my eyes, you are the one I want to kill. It's really like listening to your words. He said two words that were completely useless. Seeing his speechless expression, Wang Yanran covered her mouth and smiled, okay, I won't tease you anymore. I already understand your sister's situation. I have simply helped her take care of it just now. The situation will not get worse in a short time. After my diagnosis, I have basically determined that your sister's condition is actually caused by her own natural ability. Innate ability, Lu Zioki blinked, a little confused. Yes, you heard that right. Wang Yanran became serious when talking about her professional knowledge. Since the dungeon came, people have gradually discovered that everyone has an ability that has not yet been activated. Everyone calls this seemingly innate ability a talent, which can be viewed and activated through the enlightenment crystal. Before the age of 18, natural abilities will grow with people's training until they reach their peak at the age of 18. If the talents are not turned on at this time, the talents will fall into a state of silence. But there are a very small number of special talents, even if their talents are not activated or turned on, they will continue to draw the power of the host to maintain their own existence. Without exception, these talents are all talents at the legendary level or above. Through Wang Yanran's narration, Lu Zioki realized the key issue. He put his hand on the glass, as if he could touch his sister's beautiful face through the glass, and felt mixed emotions in his heart. Innate abilities above legendary level. Before the age of 18, this was something that countless people could only dream of. However, after turning 18, she transformed into a curse-like existence, greedily sucking her sister's life force like a gangrene attached to her bones. If it weren't for... If my sister hadn't dropped out of school. Suddenly, Lu Zioki thought a lot. But you don't have to worry too much. This kind of situation will naturally be cured without medicine as long as you awaken your talent. Lu Zioki's expression was reflected on the glass. Wang Yanran probably guessed what he was feeling at the moment and immediately comforted her. Awakening talent, Lu Zioki was stunned for a moment and asked hurriedly, my sister is over 18 years old, can she still awaken her talent? Of course, Wang Yanran nodded, didn't I say that after the age of 18, talent falls into silence, but it doesn't disappear. Naturally, there is still a chance to awaken it. If she had disappeared, your sister's situation would not be like this. After receiving the affirmative answer, Lu Zioqi was surprised and happy, but with a bit of hesitation, but the knowledge I knew before said that if you are over 18 years old, you will lose the chance to awaken. Yes, that's right, Wang Yanran shrugged, I just lost the opportunity, it's not like I can't give it back. Lu Zioqi. Is this still possible? He trembled all over and asked eagerly, then what should I do? Is there any way to do this? Professor Wang, do you have any idea? I'll trade this with you. Lu Zioqi took out the water of the forgotten river god. How many bottles do you want? Just tell me the number. I didn't expect you to have such a good thing. Professor Wang was a little surprised, but he still shook his head. Activating talents is beyond my ability. But I do know that there is a prop that can do this. She changed her tone and said it directly, golden apple. This prop is also effective for ordinary people. After eating it, it can awaken her dormant talents and give her the opportunity to awaken her talents again. Where can I get such props? Lu Zioqi asked. This is easy to say, but difficult to say, because props of this level are generally not tradable. Wang Yanran saw clearly, but fortunately, with the prop golden apple, our Takyo University having a copy can produce it. But the premise is that you must join our academy to enter this copy. Oh, let me tell you in advance, only moonlight level adventurers can enter this dungeon, and the explosion rate of this item is extremely low. If you plan to get it by buying it, you can give up. You can't buy it? Speaking of this, I have made no secret of it. The meaning is very clear. You can only download the dungeon yourself and get the props for your sister to use. Don't try to get them from others. Because this item cannot be traded, is rare in quantity, and extremely difficult to obtain, it is not sold on the market. There is a misunderstanding to note here. Just because it cannot be traded does not mean that it cannot be used on others. What it means is that you cannot transfer the item to others, but you can use it against other targets. Wang Yanran barely said it clearly, Mr. Lu, please join our college. We have a way to save your sister. Lu Zioqi suddenly realized. Understood. You lust after my body. Mean. Take advantage of others' danger. Okay. I'll join, Lu Zioqi agreed without thinking. For him, nothing is more important than saving his sister. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 122. Lu Wanyi seemed to have had a wonderful dream. It had been so many years since she had slept so peacefully and comfortably. In the dream, she seemed to have returned to her carefree childhood, holding her brother's hand and playing happily under the loving eyes of her parents. But in the blink of an eye, she was on the dragon's back again, quietly leaning on her brother's strong arms, soaring freely in the sky. The younger brother was face to face with her intimately, and the gleaming light from his body firmly covered the two of them. The circle of light was filled with warmth and breath that made her linger, but the soft words between the two were blown away by the roar. Blown away by the strong wind. Lu Wanyi slowly opened her eyes, with a satisfied smile still on her face, but she only saw an unfamiliar ceiling. The room was quiet, and there seemed to be no one else. Her heart suddenly felt a little empty. Wu Heitantu was lying in front of her pillow. Seeing her open her eyes, he couldn't help but put his dog face over to please, and gently cupped her cheek. Lu Wanyi was a little itchy by the hair on this little black guy, so she couldn't help but stretched out her arms to hug him, and said softly, "Oh, stop making trouble, Haitu." Even now, it was difficult for her to connect this cute little guy with the giant dragon that spread its wings and covered the sky. Crack, the door was pushed open, and the person who came in was Lu Zhaoqi. With Lu Wanyi's familiar smile on his face, he slowly walked to his sister's bed, squatted down and held his sister's soft, boneless hand. The soft palms were warm. This was the first time Lu Zhaoqi felt such warmth from her sister's palms. "Sister, you're awake. How do you feel?" He signed a pet contract with Heitantu, and there was an inexplicable connection between the two. As long as they were not far apart, they could communicate with each other and vaguely feel each other's emotions and thoughts. So as soon as Lu Wanyi woke up, Lu Zhaoqi immediately learned the news from Heitantu. Lu Wanyi blinked her bright big eyes. Lu Zhaoqi's concerned expression was reflected in her pupils, and she couldn't help but have a trace of happiness on her face. "Sister, I feel great now, as if I could eat 2 bowls of rice in one breath." She imitated Lu Zhaoqi's previous tone, stretched out 2 fingers and waved them in front of Lu Zhaoqi. The smile on Lu Zhaoqi's face became even bigger. "My sister has been suffering from the symptoms for several years and has always had a bad appetite. Today she suddenly said that she can eat 2 bowls of rice just to tell Lu Zhaoqi that her body has recovered." But Lu Zhaoqi knew in her heart that this was only temporary. It was Wang Yanran who used her special ability to temporarily make up for the gap in vitality caused by Lu Wanyi being squeezed by her own natural ability. If she wanted to fully recover, she not only had to make up for the lost vitality of her sister, but more importantly, let her use her natural ability. Wake up. Only by allowing her sister to become an adventurer and keep getting stronger can she completely make up for the oppression and wear and tear caused by her natural abilities on her body. But everything is difficult at the beginning. As long as he knows the methods and ideas, everything will no longer be a problem for Lu Zhaoqi. That's good. Sister must be hungry after sleeping all day. Get up and eat something. Yeah. Lu Wanyi nodded and was about to get up when she realized that she was only wearing a thin piece of underwear. She blushed and reached out to push Lu Zhaoqi. "You get out first. I need to get dressed." "There's nothing to be shy about. It's not like I haven't seen it before." Lu Zhaoqi didn't blink and didn't move his feet at all. The two grew up together. Not to mention changing clothes, they even took baths together countless times. They even hugged each other when sleeping at night, when they were children. It was only after Lu Zhaoqi grew up that they separated. "Looking for a fight? Get out." My sister raised her hand angrily, pretending to hit him. Lu Zhaoqi immediately held her head and begged for mercy. Okay, I'll get out. I'll leave now." When he walked to the door and was about to close it, Lu Zhaoqi poked her head in again. "Sister, I'm going to prepare food for you. You change your clothes and come down quickly." My sister said and pulled up the curtain next to the bed, completely covering herself inside. Lu Zhaoqi was a little disappointed. "Why? My sister has changed after all, and she is no longer as close to me as she used to be." Sad. Lu Wanyi changed her clothes and walked downstairs with relaxed steps. She could smell the aroma of food from afar. Lu Zhaoqi naturally knows how to cook. She brought her cooking skills from her previous life, so she is pretty good at it. Otherwise, why would Chen Haoran always want to recruit him? There is a reason for this. However, when her sister was at home, in the name of taking care of Lu Zhaoqi, she rarely let him cook, and she did all the cooking herself. Lu Zhaoqi can only wash pots and dishes, and at most she can chop vegetables. Hearing her sister's footsteps coming downstairs, Lu Zhaoqi, who was sitting in a daze at the dinner table, quickly got up and walked over to help her sister. "Sister, walk slower. Be careful." Lu Wanyi was helped downstairs by Zhaoqi. The smile on her face became brighter and she looked at her brother angrily. "Oh, sister, I haven't reached the point where I need help even when I go downstairs." Although he said this, his body still leaned on Lu Zhaoqi honestly, as if he had someone to rely on. After waking up until now, Lu Wanyi didn't even feel a cough. She was full of energy. She seemed to have got rid of a huge burden and was so relaxed that she could almost fly. Lu Xiaoqi also laughed and didn't care about her sister's duplicity. Instead, she introduced her sister to today's meal. Professor Wang said that my sister's body should be recuperated as soon as possible, so I made some nourishing food for her. Duck soup, stewed beef with radish, roasted chicken with potatoes, stir-fried eel, steamed egg with shrimp. Lu Xiaoqi pressed her sister next to the dining table and introduced her carefully prepared dishes to her. Food, with a cheerful look on his face. He no longer has to work hard to hide his sister. It could obviously bring her a better life, but he didn't dare to tell her because he had to worry about her body and feelings. My sister stared blankly at the rich food, as if she had fallen into a dream for a moment. After a long time, she came back to her senses and gently held Lu Xiaoqi's hand. Her expression was a little complicated and she said, "I'm sorry, Xiaoqi. Before it was my sister." She hesitated, with a look of sadness and guilt on her face. Because her parents passed away, she hated the profession of adventurer. She believed that becoming an adventurer was a group of people who were blinded by high profits and did not care about their own safety. It would only bring misfortune to their family, so she resisted on her own. Awakening talent, I don't want my younger brother to take the adventurer assessment. But after going through the series of things, she has now figured it out. Maybe I am too extreme. Although the profession of adventurers is dangerous, without their silent efforts behind the scenes, the world may have been in chaos long ago. Lu Xiaoqi has the ability to become an outstanding adventurer. She should not stop him from becoming better, but should be proud of him. Moreover, a large part of the reason why my brother went out for adventure was precisely because of himself, his unsatisfactory body. Lu Xiaoqi knew that she was talking about things that prevented her from becoming an adventurer, so she leaned down and hugged her sister gently. "Sister, I have never complained about anything. Although my father and mother are no longer here, Xiaoqi can still be my sister's dependence. She will always stand by my sister's side and protect you." Lu Wanyi leaned into Lu Xiaoqi's arms, and was so moved that she couldn't speak for a moment, and could only say a choked "yeah." The two siblings hug each other. The scene is beautiful and warm. The place where Lu Xiaoqi and the others are now is a place similar to a sanatorium prepared by Zhao Sueking for them. However, this sanatorium is for one person and is equipped with quite advanced medical equipment and recuperation equipment. The reason why the Lu family siblings will temporarily live here is not only because Wang Yanran wants to recuperate her sister's health, but also the more important reason is that the safety factor of the Lu family courtyard is no longer guaranteed. The wall was swept away by the black charcoal head and tail. Something as big as the monster siege happened, and the order of Chengdu was seriously affected. Common businesses and schools have announced holidays one after another. This break lasts for 7 days, which is equivalent to a short vacation. Except for taking Lu Xiaoqi and her sister to the nursing home after the monster siege, Zhao Sueking never showed up, and she didn't know what she was busy with. On the contrary, Wang Yanran has been coming here these days. Under the guise of helping Lu Wanyi recover, she chattered a lot of questions to Lu Xiaoqi, most of which were about the affairs between him and Zhao Sueking. Judging from her gossipy appearance, she doesn't look like a strong Sun Yao person at all. Lu Xiaoqi was also speechless, but since he had something to ask of her, he could only respond casually. I don't know what she was thinking, hearing that Zhao Sueking and Lu Xiaoqi exchanged skill books, were trapped in the fog dungeon together, and finally passed the dungeon with Lu Xiaoqi's killing spree, and attended Zhao Sueking's birthday party. When doing these things, her eyes became brighter and brighter, as if she knew some big secret. On the second day of the holiday, Zhao Sueking finally appeared. And there was someone who appeared with her that was beyond Lu Xiaoqi's expectations. Homeroom teacher, Xiao Yan. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 123. Sister Yan, how could you? Lu Xiaoqi was shocked. What? Are you surprised to see me? Xiao Yan crossed her arms and looked at Lu Xiaoqi sideways, looking a little dissatisfied. You're not a bad boy. You hid so many things from me. She walked up to Lu Xiaoqi in a few steps and strangled Lu Xiaoqi's neck with her arms. Should I call you Yao boss now? The crazy things that were rumored in Yu Hui's circle eventually fell into Xiao Yan's ears. Of course she didn't believe it. She was certain about the abnormality of Lu Xiaoqi's strength. But you have to say that under her nose, this guy suddenly made a 3-jump from the middle of the star to the sun realm. Even if he beat her to death, she wouldn't believe it. Before the monster siege alarm, she watched Lu Xiaoqi fly away in front of her eyes, which had already refreshed her understanding. If Lu Xiaoqi had become a big boss of Sun Yao now. This is not just about refreshing her cognition, it is simply reshaping her outlook on things. What's more, didn't the official refute the rumor, saying that the adventurer surnamed Lu was only at the Yuehui level, but his combat power was very outstanding? The relevant departments said this internally and externally. Internally refers to participating in this war, adventurers; outside refers to those ordinary people. Regardless of whether others believe it or not, Xiao Yan believes it anyway. Ah! Lu Xiaoqi pretended to scream, Sister Yan, please have mercy. I'm going to die, I'm going to die. How dare I call myself the boss of Sun Yao? I've just been in Yuhui. We just reached the early stage of moonlight. Seeing that Lu Xiaoqi was still trembling under her majesty, Xiao Yan nodded with satisfaction and let go of her arms. In fact, she was still a little uneasy. Despite her bold movements, she still felt a murmur in her heart towards the student whose strength was already above hers. Fortunately, Lu Xiaoqi was very generous and helped her regain her confidence as a head teacher. Say it. Tell the truth. When did you reach the Moonlight Realm? Zhao Xueqing and Zhang Heng were also watching the excitement. Seeing that Lu Xiaoqi, who once killed everyone in the Tower of Confusion, was treated like a wronged little wife under the hands of the head teacher, Zhang Heng narrowed his eyes and was amazed. Naturally, the two of them also knew the rumors about Lu Xiaoqi. Their views are quite different from Xiao Yan's. After all, they had just cleared the Tower of Confusion together not long ago, which could only be entered by the Starlight level. So both of them felt that Lu Xiaoqi at the Yuehui level was acceptable, but at the Riao level. Please allow me to say no. However, they have seen Lu Xiaoqi's strength, especially Zhao Xueqing. She has witnessed Lu Xiaoqi's awakening of talent and walked through it step by step. She had completely given up trying to speculate on Lu, whose combat prowess had changed in 3 days, using normal human thinking. Therefore, there is no doubt whether Lu Xiaoqi's combat power can reach Riao level. A Starlight level can kill difficult dungeon monsters instantly, and a Moonlight level can reach the level of Sunlight. It seems reasonable to think so. Lu Xiaoqi enjoyed some love from her class teacher. At this moment, she rubbed her neck aggrievedly and said, not long ago. Zhao Xueqing and I cleared the puzzle. Cough cough cough. Zhao Xueqing coughed several times to interrupt Lu Xiaoqi's words. Lu Xiaoqi realized that she had let something slip and immediately stopped talking. Huh? Xiao Yan stared at the two little guys with her hands on her hips, obviously knowing that there was something fishy between them. Her mood is a bit complicated at the moment. She is obviously the class teacher. Obviously in the class, she knows Lu Xiaoqi best. Result. What's going on? Xiao Yan's head teacher became so tense that even Zhang Heng on the side didn't dare to speak. The paper could not contain the anger. Seeing that Lu Xiaoqi had spilled the beans, Zhao Xueqing had no choice but to admit it. Lu Xiaoqi, Zhang Heng, and I have already completed the dungeon once as a team. I believe you also know that copy, its name is Tower of Confusion. However, this copy is no longer available and was taken away by cultists. Zhao Xueqing briefly explained a few words. Tower of Confusion. Xiao Yan repeated the name of the dungeon, and then glared at the two of them fiercely. You two guys. How audacious. If I hadn't been watching, sooner or later something would have happened. Of course she knew about this dungeon, and even said that she had gone there with her teammates to try it out before, but it was a pity that they stopped at the 34th floor and could not meet the talkative Gino. She didn't expect that the three of them could break the record. She just thought that they were just as unprepared as she was and wasted an opportunity. Xiao Yan took on the attitude of a head teacher and scolded the two of them. Then she put her face away and asked Lu Zioqi, by the way, Zioqi, how is your sister's illness going now? Xiao Yan has always admired Lu Zioqi's sister. Especially in some places, the two people still have some resonance. Lu Wanyi's physical condition has always been bad. She knew something about it, but she didn't know that it could be serious enough to require the help of someone at the Riao level to treat it. After the monster siege incident, in line with the attitude of being responsible for her work as a class teacher, she conducted home visits to the students in her class one by one. On the one hand, she checked on the students' conditions and calmed down the emotions of some ordinary students. On the other hand, it is also to investigate whether there are any families in need of help, such as if someone in the family is hurt, or if there is a situation, such as the home being destroyed by a monster, and register them one by one. When I arrived at Lu Zioqi's place, I realized that I couldn't contact his family. My sister doesn't have a mobile phone, so she uses the landline at home. When I arrived at the door of Lu Zioqi's house, I saw, what a guy. One wall has collapsed. The door to the house was closed and no one was there. Lu Zioqi's own phone number couldn't be reached either. Xiao Yan thought about it and decided to ask Zhao Xueqing if she knew about his condition. This is the right person to ask. How could Zhao Xueqing not know? Xiao Yan successfully learned the whereabouts of Lu Zioqi and her brother, and then also learned about his sister's physical condition from Zhao Xueqing. That's why I came with Zhao Xueqing. Thank you for your concern, Sister Yan. My sister is fine for the time being. Lu Zioqi showed a bright smile. Professor Wang is taking care of her up here right now. Speaking of his cell phone, he then remembered that since the war, he had taken his sister over and hadn't been home for several days. The cell phone had long been powered off and shut down. He didn't bring the charger and didn't care about it. He threw it away. It's eating dust in the room. Temporary. Xiao Yan was aware of it. She thought about the word in her heart, sighed slightly, and didn't ask any more questions. After all, she couldn't help him much. Lu Zioqi was already much stronger than her, so asking was in vain. Perhaps because of the mention of Professor Wang, Zhao Xueqing's expression changed slightly. She pulled Lu Zioqi aside and asked in a low voice, what exactly did you say to Wang Yanran? It's been getting worse and worse since she came here. I didn't say anything. Lu Zioqi looked innocent. I answered whatever she asked, just tell the truth. Zhao Xueqing glared at him. If she asks me any questions related to me in the future, she is not allowed to say anything. Okay, okay. You are a rich woman, you have the final say. Lu Zioqi shrugged. As the saying goes, eat people with soft lips and take people with short hands. Lu Zioqi used the rich woman's sanatorium and food for free, so naturally she had to rely on her. I've said it many times. Don't call me rich woman. Zhao Xueqing gritted her teeth and said angrily. Okay, rich woman, Lu Zioqi readily agreed, and before she could react, he immediately diverted his attention. By the way, why did you bring Zhang Heng and the others here today? What's the matter? What else can happen? It's just that, Zhao Xueqing replied. Lu Zioqi. So what exactly is it? Stop it, okay. After looking at his expression, Zhao Xueqing finally showed a satisfied smile and said softly. The time has come to download the dungeon. If you delay it, you will have to wait for a long time. Lu Zhaoqi suddenly nodded. I see. This copy of the disaster dimension will be open soon. Zhao Xueqing naturally would not miss this opportunity. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 124. The copy that Zhao Xueqing and Miss Zhao Er would like would not be a simple thing. As I said before, it is a copy dedicated to building equipment. At the same time, it also has its own uniqueness. For example, it only has one copy space. After all adventurers enter, they are in the same space and grab common resources. For another example, it is not open to the public at all times, and the time you can enter is quite limited. Because there is only one copy space, there are only so many total resources. After it is robbed, the copy space will be closed and everyone will be evicted. If you want to re-enter, you have to wait until its copy space is refreshed and reopened. In addition, those who can enter this copy space must be lower than Sun Yao level. This is also the reason why this dungeon is evaluated as a difficult level, because this determines that you not only have to fight monsters but also snatch resources from a group of adventurers at the Yuehui level. For another example, there is no customs clearance evaluation. Only before the copy space is closed, a ranking list will appear to display the gains of all the adventurer teams and list the rankings. Because the resources are all bound, even if you are jealous of other people's gains, you cannot snatch them away. Therefore, the role of this ranking is just to hold the cup, which is quite confusing. Last but not least, it has more than one entrance. Data released by the Dragon Kingdom shows that a total of 17 dungeon entrances to the disaster dimension have been discovered across the country, which cannot be moved, and there are also entrances to this dungeon abroad. According to incomplete statistics, there are about 100 entrances to this copy around the world, distributed in every corner of the world. This means that no force can block the resources in this copy for exclusive use, and can only choose to cooperate with others to seize resources. Therefore, it often happens that the two sides are fighting each other, and suddenly people come out of nowhere to disrupt the situation. Some people reap the benefits, and some are beaten into fools. I also want to participate in this dungeon. Xiao Yan walked to the two of them with her hands in her hands, interrupting the discussion between Zhao Xueqing and Lu Zhaoqi. Huh? Sister Yan. Are you serious? Lu Zhaoqi was a little shocked. Nonsense. Otherwise, how can I feel relieved when I see you two little bastards committing suicide every day? Xiao Yan put her hands on her hips, her face was not red, her heart was not beating, she was confident in her words, and she was not trying to get in the way at all. Consciousness. Classmate Zhao, what do you think about this matter? Lu Zhaoqi turned around and asked her. Stand here and watch. Zhao Xueqing folded her hands and replied calmly, Teacher Xiao has already discussed this matter with me, and I have no objection. Fine. As long as you are happy, I don't care. Lu Zhaoqi shrugged and reluctantly agreed. It's not that he dislikes Xiao Yan's strength. Anyway, when it comes to fighting, it's okay to lead one, and it's okay to lead three. To him, there's no difference. It's just that Sister Yan's personality is so rambunctious, and she has the buff blessing from her class teacher. When the time comes to enter the dungeon, she must let Lu Zhaoqi listen to her commands. Lu, don't want to lose face. This situation is like when you go out drinking with your friends, but your girlfriend insists on coming with you, and then a bunch of gentlemen can't let you go. This is especially the case when you are a respectable wife-keeper. But does Lu Zhaoqi dare to raise objections? He doesn't dare. So he could only hold his nose and admit it. So the four people discussed related matters about the copy. When it was time for dinner, Lu Zhaoqi warmly invited the three of them to stay for the meal. Not surprisingly, he was rejected by all three people. Xiao Yan's reason was that she didn't believe in Lu Xiaoqi's craftsmanship, Zhang Heng was embarrassed, and Zhao Sueking. Isn't the chef's skills better than Lu Xiaoqi's? After a certain gossip named Wang finished conditioning Lu Wanyi, she heard Lu Xiaoqi's polite words and was eager to give it a try, but was forcibly dragged away by Zhao Sueking. Zhao Sueking knows her best friend well. At first glance, this Sun Yao powerhouse looks majestic. In fact, once you get acquainted with her, you will find that she is just like a female college student in her late teens or early 20s, and she even has a look in her eyes. With his clear stupidity, he doesn't look like a university professor with outstanding intelligence. If she were allowed to stay here for a long time, Zhao Sueking could only say that she was not at ease at all. So Lu Xiaoqi could only send the four of them off with a look of regret. The elder sister fell into a deep sleep again, and Black Carbon Head stayed above to watch her. Lu Xiaoqi knew that it would take her half a day to sleep. After closing the bedroom door, Lu Xiaoqi's face darkened, and she said to herself, "Hey! What are you doing? You can just get into my body and hide for a while, but are you still planning to live there? How long are you going to keep me in my body?" Of course, he is not crazy, nor is he schizophrenic. He is communicating with Digi. Ever since they signed an equality contract that day, she used a magical spell to give up her physical body, transform herself into a soul body, and follow the connection between the two to get into Lu Xiaoqi's body. In this way, he avoided the judgment of the dungeon and successfully escaped from the dungeon. Now it has turned into a mini-form, lying in Lu Xiaoqi's dungeon, sleeping soundly while holding his golden elixir. But don't tell me, when Lu Xiaoqi looked inside, this cute version of Digi holding her own golden elixir was quite cute, with her small nose, small mouth, and chubby little face. It's so adorable. If she just wanted to sleep, that would be it. Lu Xiaoqi was not a stingy person, so what would happen if he let her sleep? But after she woke up, she took a sip of Lu Xiaoqi's golden elixir, sucked out a ball of mana from it and gathered it in her palm. Then, like eating marshmallows, she bit by bit Lu Xiaoqi's hard work, the mana gained through hard training, licked into his belly. This made Lu Xiaoqi a little unbearable. Not only can it be unbearable mentally, but also physically. After all, if she takes this bite, she will have to practice for a long time. If you take 100 steps forward, you have to take 80 steps back. No matter how hard Lu Xiaoqi practices, if he continues at this pace, when will he truly stand up and become a master of the soul above the golden elixir? Moreover, she is only sucking mana now, who knows what else she will suck in later. Breathe blood. Breathe in semen? If this goblin continues like this, I'm afraid it won't be long before Lu Xiaoqi can be sucked into a human and fucked. The original purpose of Lu Xiaoqi's signing of the contract with her was to find a Thai teammate, but according to the current situation, the contract was signed, but the Thai was not found. Instead, he found a little ancestor for himself. She cannot be beaten or scolded, an equal contract, both parties are not allowed to harm each other, and she must provide for her carefully, feed her, and house her. So when she woke up again this time, Lu Xiaoqi hurriedly shouted to her. This is actually Geeyan's third awakening. She ignored Lu Xiaoqi the previous 2 times. This does not mean that she deliberately acted stupid and did not respond. Lu Xiaoqi felt as if she had regressed countless years and became a baby with insufficient energy, acting entirely on instinct. But this time she seemed to have regained some of her consciousness. Facing Lu Xiaoqi's words, she finally reacted, making a hazy muttering sound from her mouth, like a young lady who was angry with her. She rubbed her sleepy eyes and groaned, "Why are you so anxious? My current state is too weak. I will recover naturally when I recover." Hey! Can I not be in a hurry? Lu Xiaoqi blew his beard and glared, "You have been living in my body for so long, and I haven't even asked you for rent. Forget it, you actually still eat and drink. Think of me as an all-you-can-eat buffet. I'm knocking, I don't want to practice. Ji Lan raised her eyes, glanced at him, and hummed, "What do you know? I'm helping you refine your magic power. It's okay if you don't thank me, but you still say bad words. Don't forget, we signed an equality contract. We can't hurt each other." Refining mana, Lu Zioqi was stunned for a moment. What's the use of this? I only see you showing off. Won't you know if you try it yourself, Ji Lan said, taking another sip of mana and gathering it in the palm of her hand, and began to show off. Lu Zioqi mobilized her magic power as instructed, and found that the magic power was running more than twice as fast as before. And he is more relaxed and obedient than before. It's like the quality has improved a lot. He opened the skills panel, and something even more surprising happened. He found that the amount of mana he needed to consume to release his skills was actually decreasing. Blade Storm, which previously required 4,000 mana to release, now only costs 3,600 mana. On the premise that the upper limit of mana remains unchanged, the consumption of each of his skills has been reduced. Lu Zioqi's eyes sparkled, she changed her previous attitude, her face was full of smiles, and she apologized to Digi. "Hey. You didn't tell me earlier. What a huge misunderstanding. I'm sorry, it's your fault. I'll apologize to you. Eat slowly. Eat more, and don't be polite. It's so exciting." Ji Lan gave him a big look, then ate up the remaining mana in his hand in a few mouthfuls, and then fell asleep with Jin Dan in his arms. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 125. My sister's health is getting better day by day. The smile on Lu Zioqi's face became even brighter. My sister's illness has been relieved and treated, and it's like moving away a huge boulder that has been accumulated in Lu Zioqi's heart for a long time. She feels full of energy in everything she does. Even his cultivation is improving steadily, and he will enter the middle stage of Jindan in the blink of an eye. With Digi's help, he further developed the true power of his golden elixir, and his combat power was significantly improved, making up for his shortcomings. Even if he doesn't rely on skills, he can still compete with Yuhui level people. It's a golden elixir after all. As his understanding of his own abilities gradually improved, and his proficiency in the exercises also continued to improve, he began to study how to bring this cultivation method to the people around him. For example, my sister. My sister is not an adventurer yet and cannot afford the burden that her natural ability will place on her body. If she can practice, apart from anything else, as long as we can step into the realm of foundation building, it will probably be much better than the current situation. More importantly, as her sister's strength improves, Lu Zioqi will feel more at ease. However, he didn't dare to take risks with his sister until he was 100% sure, so he changed his target. Black Carbon Head. Although this little guy has an inhuman body, it reaches the same goal by different routes, and the principles are very different, which does not affect Lu Zioqi's use of it for experiments at all. Furthermore, this guy is of dragon bloodline. He is famous for his patience. If something goes wrong, Lu Zioqi and Ji Lan, mainly Ji Lan, can quickly save the situation. The last point is that it has the same mind as Lu Zioqi. If something is wrong, Lu Zioqi can sense it immediately. To sum up, this little white mouse is destined to have a black charcoal head, and Jesus cannot keep it. Lu Zioqi said it. Hi Tantio you, knock on Grandma Li. Did you hear that? Knock on Grandma Li. Therefore, my sister's complexion is getting better day by day, while Lu Zioqi and Heitantu are just the opposite. One has dark circles under her eyes, excessive energy consumption, and the other also looks languid. Lu Zioqi caught Heitantu every day and poured mana into his body, trying to find a suitable route to transport his energy. However, this is not a day's work, and it is often stuck halfway, unable to make any progress. However, this also accelerated his understanding of his own skills. The basic skills that Lao Bai gave him were all-inclusive and covered almost all mainstream directions. The biggest feature was that they had no special characteristics and it was extremely difficult to get carried away. Now, with his unremitting efforts, he has finally summed up the relevant cultivation techniques and methods. A general outline of immortal cultivation techniques suitable for this world is slowly taking shape. I believe that the true beginning of the great era of cultivating immortals is not far away. At that time, when all the people are cultivating immortals, people will get rid of their dependence on dungeons and have more trump cards to resist monsters. If this continues to develop, this world will not be like Digi's world, which was overwhelmed by monsters and eventually turned into dungeons. Part. In addition, Lu Xiaoqi's military exploits were also counted. A very scary value. Lu Xiaoqi didn't ask in detail. Anyway, to him, the specific numerical value had lost its meaning. When talking about redeeming rewards for war achievements, he asked if there were any props that could help his sister awaken her natural abilities. Unfortunately, even the country could not find such props for a while. So he changed his goal and made 3 requirements. 1. Help him collect other props to unlock the skill bar except scroll for unlocking the skill bar. 2. No matter what level of passive, all are required. 3. Pay attention to the props or equipment that increase the shortcut bar. The above requirements are all met by my own military exploits this time. For this young man with unlimited potential, the relevant departments also give the green light and support. He quickly gathered what he needed. Limiter release device. Unlock the remaining skill slots after use, up to 8 unlocked, one-time props. Sword Mastery B-rated passive skill. Mastered the essence of swordsmanship and reduced the consumption of swordsmanship skills. Weapon Mastery B-rated passive skill. When using weapons, the attack power is increased, and different special effects are attached to different weapons. Death Resistance A-rated passive skill. The lower the health value, the faster the recovery speed. Every time you are close to death, your potential will be stimulated and your strength will be improved. Quick Bar Mosaic. After use, you can add an additional shortcut bar. The number of additional shortcut bars shall not exceed 10. The total of these things is not much worse than Lu Xiaoqi's SSS clearance evaluation in the Nightmare level dungeon, not to mention that this is a reward specially tailored for him. There is a saying, if we only look at the military exploits, a priceless restrictor release device has already deducted most of Lu Xiaoqi's military exploits. Don't even think about A-level passives and B-level passives. It's impossible to give it. However, the country paid infinite attention to a young man like Lu Xiaoqi who was completely unreasonable and silently raised his reward by 2 levels. Not to mention the efforts of General Wang and Rongqing's top executive behind this. So when the reward was given to Lu Xiaoqi, it became so exaggerated. Although Lu Xiaoqi couldn't see so many twists and turns, he had experienced so much and was quite knowledgeable. After seeing this reward, he felt a little hot and knew that his military exploits were definitely not worthy of this reward. But the person who gave him the gift was his old acquaintance, Captain Li Wenbo. This person is also good at observing words and expressions. He can tell from Lu Xiaoqi's expression and movements that he is hesitating, and he dispels Lu Xiaoqi's worries in a few words. Let him understand the importance of this award and the efforts made by relevant departments to this end, so as to create a more important sense of belonging and dependence on the country. Lu Xiaoqi was stunned for a moment by what he said. She didn't understand much else, but she knew one thing anyway. Take it with confidence, it'll be fine. As a result, the award ceremony came to a successful conclusion after friendly talks between the 2 parties. The number of skill bars that Lu Xiaoqi has unlocked has increased from 20 to 28, including those that have been damaged. After learning the three passives, I became crazy and turned into the following skills. Swordsmanship Mastery Rightward Arrow Swordsmanship Mysteries Rightward Arrow Extreme Swordsmanship Weapon Mastery Rightward Arrow Weapon Master Rightward Arrow God's Left Hand Death Resistance Rightward Arrow 100 Deaths with No Solution Ji Kendo, Rating, SSS Level, Upward Arrow. You can master all the swordsmanship in the world at a glance, master it once you learn it, and master it once you understand it. The skill consumption of all swordsmanship series is reduced by 99%, the skill rating of all swordsmanship series is automatically increased by 1 level, the maximum cannot exceed SS. Characteristics, 1 sword, 1 thought, sword without regret, everything can be used as a sword. Consumption. Cooldown dash. Features detailed explanation. 1 sword, 1 thought, each time the sword is drawn, it comes with the power of one's own will. If the enemy cannot dispel the will, it cannot resist the attack. Sword without regrets, every time the sword is drawn, it maintains maximum power. Everything can be a sword, no longer limited to form, everything is regarded as a sword in the hand. Left Hand of God Rating, SSS. Level, Upward Arrow. Any weapon can exert 1000% power in the hands of the user, the more types of weapons carried, the higher the blessing it receives, no upper limit, each weapon is given different special effects, randomly. Characteristics, Weapon Wielder, cannot eyes with bare hands, returns to unity. Consumption. Cooldown dash. Features detailed explanation. Weapon Wielder, any instrument can be treated as a weapon by the user and mastered. Cannot-eyed with his bare hands, when the user faces an enemy with empty hands, he can forcefully save 1 damage, once for each target, and seize the opponent's weapon. Unification, all the user's skills can be unified into the same type of skills by the user and released using weapons. Death without explanation, Rating, SSS. Level, Upward Arrow. Charge 1 extra resurrection per day, which can be stacked up to 100 times. After each resurrection, all attributes of the self are increased by 10% until recharged for the number of resurrections. The soul of the killed target can be absorbed to add additional resurrection times to oneself, need to meet absorption conditions. Characteristics, indestructible, potential stimulation, non-dual path. Consumption. Cooldown dash. Features detailed explanation. Indestructible, the body cannot be destroyed before its own energy and blood are exhausted. Potential stimulation, the more serious the injury, the faster the recovery speed. After resurrection, you can choose 1 attribute improvement to keep: attack, defense, speed, vitality, mana. Wuordeo, cannot be killed twice by the same move, permanently effective. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 126. Luzioki was shocked. Even someone who is used to seeing countless SSS super passives is still shocked by the abilities brought by these 3 passives. Let's talk about Ji Kendo first. Before upgrading, its effect is nothing more than reducing the consumption of sword skills. When it is fully upgraded, it only reduces by 20%, which is better than nothing. The help to Luzioki cannot be said to be of little use, it can only be said to be useless. With that time, I could show off 2 more bottles of medicine and naturally recover. Luzioki's medicine is free anyway. $9.99 plus, don't use it for free. But after upgrading to SSS, the nature of the entire skill changes. 3 effects, each one more awesome than the other. Although it seems that the first effect is useless, after all, Luzioki just opened it when entering the picture. But skills and techniques are different. Skills can be interrupted, silenced, and interfered with, but skills like swordsmanship and knife skills, once mastered, are a lifelong thing. Although Luzaoki uses a sword, does he understand it? He knows how to be mean. But I don't know about swords. If this passive allows him to truly understand the sword, then the benefits to his strength improvement and future development prospects will undoubtedly be huge. Needless to say, the second ability goes without saying. With this ability, Luzaoki's main attack skills can finally be improved again. What does it mean to reduce consumption by 99%? Luzaoki's Blade Storm only requires 36 mana points to release. It was 4,000 before, but became 3,600 after the mana was refined. This means that Luzaoki's sword intention consumption has changed from 50 points per second, originally 1,000 points, reduced by 95% by all things allowed passively, to 1 point. The actual value is 0.5, if it is less than 1 point, it will be calculated as 1 point. Then, the maximum number of Blade Storm Luzaoki can maintain has increased from 4 to 400 in one fell swoop. Including the effect of the dagger, the total is 800. What is this concept? 8 Blade Storm can cover the west of Chengdu, but what about 800? Luzaoki no longer dared to think further. Of course, Luzaoki will definitely not let his attack method stay at the B rating. Now that his consumption can keep up, it is imperative for him to upgrade his skills. And then the last point, what does it mean to increase the skill rating of the swordsmanship series by 1 level? For example, Luzaoki's current Blade Storm is B level. After receiving the blessing, the value will increase from a B-rated skill to an A while the main effect remains unchanged. The consumption remains unchanged. You know, every time a skill increases by 1 level, its effect will change qualitatively. Coupled with Luzaoki's infinite skill bar, if he learns all the sword skills, wouldn't he take off? The features are even better. The first one goes directly from numerical competition to the level of metaphysics. If your will is not as strong as mine, then you won't be able to stop me from hitting you. In other words, even if Luzaoki faces a Ryeo level expert in the future, if the target's will is not as strong as Luzaoki's, then Luzaoki will kill him. The second feature is simply understood to be used to save consumption. This means that you only need to spend min mana each time to have max skill effects. Of course, this is no longer limited to skills. As long as you use a sword, even a flata will become a serious sword. Everyone understands, no need to say more. The third, everything can be a sword, the name is the meaning, which allows Luzaoki to completely get rid of dependence on weapons and no longer have the embarrassment of not having a sword. After talking about Jiyi Kendo, we are looking at the second passive left hand of God. It has to be said that the skill and Jiyi Kendo complement each other and make up for each other. Jiyi Kendo, everything can be a sword, God's left hand, all weapons are 10 times more powerful. And the more weapons you carry, the higher the blessing. Each weapon will also have different special effects. The first feature may not be easy to understand. Let's take a chestnut and you'll understand. If Luzaoki opens a Gundam, then he can use this passive to use the Gundam as a weapon to use Blade Storm. Understand? The second characteristic of Kunna is that he dies with his bare hands. When not equipped with a weapon, he can be forcibly immune to 1 damage. It takes effect on each target individually, and he can snatch the opponent's weapon. At this moment, Luzaoki thought of countless ways to use it. Thousands of words condensed into 1 sentence. Get it you? The third characteristic, unification, all skills become the same type of skills. It doesn't seem very easy to understand, but you can understand it in another sentence. Luzaoki can now regard all his skills as swordsmanship skills. Use the dagger to release hymn of praise, guardian of the stars, power of the 4 extremes, and reverse counterattack, and you will also be blessed by the passive extreme swordsmanship. Ultimate Kendo, which was originally only effective for Bladestorm, is now open to all skills. Do you feel like your combat power level has increased in an instant? The third skill is a complete and utter laziness skill. As soon as the status is full, it will come with 100 resurrections, and each time it is consumed, it will provide 10% of all attributes. This means that if these 100 resurrections are eliminated, Luzioki's all attributes will increase tenfold. Moreover, resurrection will be restored once a day. If Luzioki cannot be killed even once in a day until the end of the fight, then Luzioki will be immortal. More importantly, it can also absorb the souls of targets killed by Luzioki, adding extra resurrection times for Luzioki. If it goes wrong, wouldn't Luzioki's resurrection become more difficult? How does this work? Properties are also sub-properties. The first one is that the indestructible King Kong is specially designed to deal with destructive attributes and maiming and bleeding effects. As long as my energy and blood are not exhausted, all of them have no effect on me. The second potential trigger permanently retains a certain attribute after resurrection. The third non-dual path. Luzioki can already stand up and declare unilaterally that she is invincible. To kill Luzioki, first think of 101 ways in advance. If you want to kill me, you can try it. The key is that this is just the resurrection that comes with this skill. Don't forget what else Luzioki has. Power of the Four Poles rebirth in the form of fire. The body protecting dragon of Yanhuang talisman. Golden cicada escape talisman *999 plus. How many ways do you have to prepare to completely kill Luzioki? First, you have to use up all the equipment on him, then empty the blue bar of his fire form, put all the protective dragons into CD, and finally use up the number of resurrections brought by his 100 deaths unexplained. Okay, let's just wash up and go to bed. Don't put too much pressure on yourself. Of course, although Luzioki's self-protection ability is now fully developed, there is still a serious problem. He is afraid of restricted skills. He currently only has one ability to deal with negative effects, the Son of Heaven's characteristic, which is 10 times the resistance to abnormal conditions brought by his immortal will. He can only dodge other restricted skills. If you can't dodge, you have to eat it. If the enemy knows his abilities and just needs to get a sealing skill to put him in a small dark room and confine him, then he will have no temper at all. With the 3 skill bars broken, Luzioki became 100 million points stronger than before. In a blink of an eye, he focused on his remaining B-rated skills. 4-pole power was rated A, not among them, looked at the consumption that had become 10 figures, and the corners of his mouth were crooked. Let me continue to rise. Bladestorm, 10,000 swords return to the sect. Reverse counterattack, forced vibration. Guardian of stars, shine of stars. Hymn of praise, holy protection. 10,000 swords return to the sect rating, S, add 1. Level. With 1 sword strike, 10,000 swords will surrender. All sword skills on the scene that are lower than the skill rating will be controlled by the releaser. The sword intention will be converted into the immortal sword gang, which will be shrouded outside the whole body. Attacks with lower sword intention value will be unable to cause damage to the user. Sword intent equal to 1/10 of the damage will be deducted. The immortal sword gang will automatically cause damage to surrounding monsters. The damage received by ordinary monsters is increased by 500%, and the damage received by elite monsters is increased by 300%. Boss monsters are increased by 200%, and Lord monsters are increased by 150%. After turning on Wanjian Gazong, 500 points of sword intent will be consumed every second to maintain the immortal sword. The user can control Wanjian Gazong to move and attack. The longer it lasts, the damage of 10,000 swords returning to the sect will be higher until the sword intention is exhausted. During the process of releasing 10,000 swords returning to the sect, the sword intention will also accumulate at a rate of 500 points per second until it reaches the upper limit, Targets killed by Blade Storm. The upper limit of sword intent will be additionally increased. The current sword intent value is 487050/487050, inherited from the superimposed sword intent of Blade Storm. Characteristics: armor breaking, quick and deliberate, critical strike. Consumption: 800 mana, lower limit. Cooldown dash. Features: detailed explanation. Armor break: when successfully attacking the target, reduce the enemy's armor defense by 80%. Quick determination: the accumulation speed of sword intention is increased by 300%, and reaches 500% after the return of 10,000 swords to the sec stops. Critical hit: it has a beheading effect on targets with blood volume below 40%. PS, the above data have all calculated the blessings of Ji Kendo and all things are allowed, and the following skills have all calculated the blessings of Ji Kendo. Forced vibration, rating, S, add 1. Level. Actively make a parrying posture, forcing the target's upcoming skills to be attached to one's own block. After the block is successful, oneself will not be harmed by any damage, and will be forced to knock down the target's weapon, making the opponent freeze and block. After failure, the damage will be reduced by 50% and you will be immune to negative effects. The next attack after the block is completed will carry all the damage from the opponent's skills and counter-attack the target. Characteristics: unloading, posture maintenance, skill switching. Consumption: mana 400, lower limit. Cooldown dash. Features: detailed explanation. Unloading: the basic success rate of blocking is increased by 80%. Posture maintenance: maintaining the blocking posture can continue to reduce subsequent attacks. It can be released on multiple targets, up to 9, for 30 seconds, and the ultimate hegemony can be activated when counter-attacking. Skill switching: when other skills are being released, you can cancel the release action and return 100% of the consumption, and use forced vibration of the knife instead. After the vibration of the knife is completed, you can automatically switch back to the previously released skill, save skill charging and forward shaking. Stars Shine, rating, S, add 1. Level. Call upon the power of the stars to heal all teammates present and restore 30%, add 4276, affected by mental strength, health to all targets. Features: Starlight Power, Mana Surge, Galaxy Tide. Consumption: 600 mana. Cooldown dash. Features: detailed explanation. Starlight Power, recover an additional 10% of the target's consumption. Mana Surge, each time healing is completed, the own mana recovery speed increases by 30%, lasting 2400s. Galaxy Tide, the treatment range and amount of treatment are based on the starry sky when released, with an additional 30% minus 80% blessing. The brighter the starlight, the better the treatment effect. Holy Protection rating, S, add 1. Level. Bless teammates with divine power and provide a guardian angel for a single target, significantly improves the attributes of teammates, and is resurrected on the spot within 20s after death, restoring 30% of the status, and the guardian angel disappears, lasting 2400s. Features: slow healing, weapon blessing, badge of honor. Consumption: 800 mana. Cooldown dash. Features: detailed explanation. Slow healing: teammates blessed with guardian angel can speed up their own injury recovery. Weapon blessing: during the duration of the skill, the blessed target's weapon will have sacred attributes and its attack will be increased. Emblem of honor: during the duration of the skill, any damage caused by the blessed target to the enemy will be converted into 5% of the healing amount to restore the blessed target's injuries. PS, since Power of the Four Extremes itself is a skill rated A, it has not been updated. It is just that with the blessing of Ji Kendo, the value has increased from A to S, so I will not list it separately here. Originally I didn't want to take a separate chapter to list the protagonist's skills, but I have no choice. There are more than 100 chapters, and many people have forgotten what the protagonist's skills are. Plus, they have been updated together. Besides, writing data is really stressful. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 127. Sister, I'm going out. 5 days have passed in a flash, and it is time for the Disaster Dimension copy to be opened. Luzioki held her sister's hand and said goodbye gently, while the black man at his feet looked excited. Luzioki has been experimenting with it a lot in the past few days, making it unable to eat well and sleep well. Heitantu almost laughed out loud when he heard that he was leaving. The badass owner is finally leaving. But this dragon was really messed up. Go away now you. Xiaoqi, Lu Wanyi looked worried and hesitated to speak. Finally, she could only say softly, be careful, I will wait for you to come back at home. Yeah. It's okay, Luzioki waved her hands and made a strong posture, I am very strong now. Although there was a suspicion of planting a flag, Luzioki still said it nonchalantly. Just kidding, who can kill me? How can a small difficulty level dungeon be so powerful? Lu Wanyi nodded and forced a smile, come back early, sister will prepare delicious food for Xiaoqi tonight. Okay, Luzioki nodded, turned around and went out. Luzioki, Zhao Sueking, Zhang Heng, and Xiao Yan made an appointment to meet at the entrance of the Adventurers Guild. Zhao Sueking was still the same, but her clothes were replaced by a large magic cloak, with powerful energy fluctuations rippling on it. After Luzioki developed her abilities during this period, her perception became very keen, and she could notice the extraordinary nature of her equipment from a long distance. Well, it should be a piece of legendary equipment, with a guaranteed value of hundreds of millions. As expected of a rich woman. Zhang Heng is still the same, but there are a few scratches on the shield that never leaves his hand, which seem to be traces of previous battles. Xiao Yan still carried her giant sword that was as tall as a person, and had a small buckler on her back, which seemed to be the equipment released in the last fog instance. Xianzhong ruler, Luzioki muttered teasingly. Now his strength has surpassed Xiao Yan, and he has lost his previous fear of the giant sword in her hand. What are you muttering about? Xiao Yan couldn't help but raise her eyebrows and snorted when she saw his eyes wandering around her body unscrupulously, and finally resting on her treasured giant sword. Nothing, the staff has been assembled, let's set off. Luzioki quickly changed the topic. None of the three raised any objections and followed Luzioki into the Adventurers Guild. In fact, no one noticed that since they gradually understood Luzioki's strength, everyone had subconsciously regarded him as the backbone. The last time I came in, it was Zhao Sueking who took the lead and led the team, but now it's Luzioki. As the Adventurers Guild's teleportation formation flashed with gleaming light, Luzioki once again came to the cyberpunk-like square at the Gate of Dimensions. Different from the last time when she looked around and was curious about everything, this time Luzioki walked in a familiar direction like a vehicle in a launch bay. She stopped in front of the door and shouted to Zhao Sueking, "Swipe your card." Zhao Sueking gave him a big look, but still took out the card and stuck it on the sensor. The location of the Disaster Dimension dungeon is slightly different from the previous Tower of Confusion. It is a small playground that is much smaller than the square below, about the size of half a football field. A lot of people have gathered inside. Luzioki looked up and saw a few familiar people. It is the little villain who has not appeared for many chapters, Tang Yu. Last time, their family used their connections behind the scenes to mess with Luzioki. Unexpectedly, Luzioki had a very strong background and was backed by the military. She was caught by Zhao Sueking again and had to deal with it. I have been at peace for so long, until now. He stayed with that flat nympho girl Li Xinran, and there were a few unfamiliar faces beside him. Lu Zhaoqi was happy. Oh, it's not that enemies don't get together. Perhaps Lu Zhaoqi's gaze was too intense, but Tang Yu seemed to sense it and turned his head to look over. He saw Lu Zhaoqi and Zhao Xueqing arriving together, especially Lu Zhaoqi, who was staring at him with a half smile. His face changed slightly, his expression was a little unnatural, and he seemed a little afraid. This time he came with several Yuhui-level elders from his family to see the world, but he didn't expect to bump into Zhao Xueqing and the others. Seeing them, he couldn't help but recall the humiliation he had received at the banquet. His expression was a little embarrassed, but more of a helpless expression. Because of this matter, he has been warned by his family not to cause trouble anymore, especially not to provoke Lu Zhaoqi again. A family that can prosper in this area has its own special channels. There was a slight disturbance, so I immediately took the time to find out some stories about Lu Zhaoqi. No matter how I looked at him, I didn't think that he was born in a civilian family. Just based on his incredible record, I am convinced that this guy is probably pretending to be a pig and eating a tiger to experience life. Now the Zhao family's road is obviously dead, and there is no point in provoking this unknown power for this reason. So he quickly warned Tang Yu, who had a problem with him, not to cause trouble to the family. If this is the case, even if Tang Yu agrees, he is still dissatisfied. But after the monsters attacked the city, news came out in Yu Hui's circle. A certain boss surnamed Lu single-handedly solved the crisis in Chengdu. His name and appearance cannot be said to be quite similar to this Lu Zhaoqi, but they can only be said to be exactly the same. This made the people of the Tang family even more convinced that Lu Zhaoqi was not someone they could provoke. Even if it is not my true strength, it is the force behind it that personally took action, and finally gave all the credit to my young master. When Tang Yu just learned the news, he was in disbelief. He simply didn't believe that a guy who looked so poor could have so much energy. Even if he is number one on the national rankings, even if the troubles caused by him are inexplicably resolved, and then his family is in serious trouble, even if the official name of the person is Lu Zhaoqi. But I, Tang Yu, just don't believe it. Well, the dead duck has a tough mouth. Well, actually I still believed it, a little panicked and a little scared. He couldn't figure out why Lu Zhaoqi had become a strong Yuehui warrior, with strength comparable to that of Sun Yao, even though he was the one who took the adventurer assessment with him, and he had only reached the middle stage of Starlight. Is it open? This person is so boring. Hey! Classmate Zhao, isn't that our old friend? Why don't you go up and say hello to him? Lu Zhaoqi pursed her lips and winked at Zhao Xueqing. Zhao Xueqing followed his gaze and happened to see Tang Yu's livid face. Boring. As if she had seen something, she quickly turned her face away and snorted angrily. Zhang Hong naturally knew about the entanglement between them, so he pursed his lips and said nothing. He didn't like Tang Yu, who was too petty and thieves either. Only Xiao Yan looked confused. Following the direction Lu Zhaoqi pointed, she saw only a group of dark people. What are you talking about? It's nothing. Lu Zhaoqi smiled but said nothing. Xiao Yan looked at Zhao Xueqing, who was silent, and then at Lu Zhaoqi, feeling a little uncomfortable. Hateful. Obviously it was me first. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 128. This is, Mr. Lu. Not long after they entered the venue, an adventurer who was fighting side by side with Lu Zhaoqi recognized him and shouted in surprise. Now everyone looked over in unison. Before the monster attacks the city, there may be many people called Mr. Lu. But after the monster attacked the city, there was only one person in Shu province who could be called Mr. Lu. That's Lu Zhaoqi. Strange, why does this boss appear here? Countless people looked at that familiar face and murmured in their hearts. Is it possible that he really only has the moonlight level? But it's not important anymore. The important thing is, this is a thigh. It must be licked. A group of people suddenly surrounded Lu Zhaoqi. They are all Lu Zhaoqi's acquaintances. Because strangers are embarrassed to squeeze in, they may not be able to squeeze in. Mr. Lu, do you still remember me? I am Taizu. We have killed monsters together. Mr. Lu, I am Lu Qiaqiang from the sealing team. It's me. Mr. Lu, do you also want to enter this disaster dimension? How about together? This is the third time I have entered, and I am very proficient in this dungeon. The scene was a bit chaotic for a moment. Dozens of Yuhui-level adventurers gathered around and looked at Lu Zhaoqi eagerly. Lu Zhaoqi nodded to them one by one with an awkward yet polite smile on her face. Lu Zhaoqi had already experienced their enthusiasm before. Zhao Xueqing was almost squeezed out by the swarming crowd. Thanks to Xiao Yan, who held her hand from behind, she was able to stand firm. Zhang Heng was motionless, but he was a little sweaty when he saw so many Yuhui-level adventurers surrounding him. Since the three people were all following Lu Zhaoqi, everyone knew that they were with Lu Zhaoqi, and they did not deliberately squeeze them, leaving them a certain amount of space. Otherwise, it was really difficult for them to stand where they were unharmed. Hard to say. The three people looked at each other and shouted in their hearts that they had made a mistake. No one expected that Lu Zhaoqi would be so popular. A large number of Yuhui adventurers crowded in and tried to exchange greetings with Lu Zhaoqi to become familiar with him. Lu Zhaoqi was also annoyed by them for a while, so he used a move to hit the east and west, pointed forward and shouted, "Look! There is a flying saucer." The surroundings suddenly fell silent. No one expected that Lu Zhaoqi would suddenly say such a sentence, and they all looked at him in astonishment. Seeing that this trick didn't work, Lu Zhaoqi couldn't help but said tentatively, "Is there a handgun? Is there a god?" "There is God. You should just watch it." Everyone looked at each other, and one of them awkwardly reconciled, "Ha ha ha. Mr. Lu is really funny. Lu Zhaoqi. Where has the trust between people gone? Can't you just look back?" But after this scene, the entrance to the dungeon finally lit up. "The disaster dimension has opened," others shouted and swarmed into the dungeon, trying to seize the opportunity. "Mr. Lu, the dungeon is open, let's go into." Many people saw that there was no hope of forming a team with Lu Zhaoqi, so they said hello and entered the dungeon one after another. There were also people who still wanted to hug Lu Zhaoqi's thigh, but Lu Zhaoqi politely refused. "I'm sorry, Mommy doesn't let me have too much contact with strangers. You want to team up with me? Then I have to ask my wife first." "What? I don't have a wife?" "Then there's no need to talk about it." Everyone. It's so tactful. When everyone was almost gone, Lu Zhaoqi breathed a sigh of relief, wiped the sweat from his forehead, turned to the three teammates who had been watching the excitement for a long time and said, "Let's go, we're going in too." "Yes. Mr. Lu," Zhao Xueqing crossed her arms and said angrily. She had just seen some shameless female adventurers, taking advantage of the crowd to deliberately rub themselves against Lu Zhaoqi, and even act like a coquettish bitch to Lu Zhaoqi. She was an old woman in her 20s and 30s, but she actually used such methods on a boy who was only 18 years old. Pooh! How shameless! Lu Zhaoqi actually didn't push them away without any righteous words, but actually felt a little bit of enjoyment. Snort! Zhao Xueqing was extremely unhappy, and her unhappy expression was as cold as eternal ice. She scolded Lu Zhaoqi in a nonchalant manner, and then realizing that she was losing her composure, she quickly took steps towards the dungeon. Xiao Yan also glared at Lu Zhaoqi and quickly followed Zhao Xueqing's pace. Lu Zhaoqi heard a bit of resentment from Zhao Xueqing's words, and was glared at by the class teacher again. She touched the back of her head with some confusion and asked Zhang Heng, "Eh? What's wrong with them?" Zhang Heng shrugged and spread his hands, indicating that he didn't know anything. The two of them also followed and entered the copy together. Stepping into the dungeon, it was as if the world was turned upside down. Luzioki seemed to have entered an interstellar journey. She felt as if she was standing in outer space, surrounded by bizarre colors and twinkling stars. A huge star hangs in the sky, and countless spherical objects revolve around it. The spheres have different speeds and orbits, just like real galaxies. What Luzioki was stepping on was also one of the spheres rotating around the star. Due to randomness, adventurers from different teams were teleported to different places. The four of them, Luzioki, signed a team contract and ended up together. The surrounding environment is desolate, and the gravity seems to be only one-third that of the Earth, but the material on the ground is much stronger than the Earth. Everyone moved around for a while and barely adapted to the environment. Zhao Xueqing looked around and was about to lift her legs to go elsewhere, but was held back by Luzioki. Wait a moment. Zhao Xueqing was still a little awkward, so she broke away from Luzioki's hand and was about to speak when she saw him pull out his dagger and point it at her. Holy protection. A mysterious light was injected into Zhao Xueqing's body, and she felt instantly shaken, as if her condition had been strengthened several times. Two thumb-sized sacred elves, one green and one purple, also appeared on her head. The elf's eyes were closed tightly, with his left palm on his right shoulder and his right palm on his left shoulder. He crossed his arms and crossed his chest, slowly circling around her. A touch of fluorescence shines down, sacred and beautiful. Zhao Xueqing felt that her energy was being continuously replenished and her physical fitness had also been significantly improved. Then, before she could fully appreciate what was special, she saw Luzioki looking at Xiaoyan and Zhang Heng, and suddenly there were two more sacred elves on the heads of the three of them. She couldn't help but be shocked. Where did this guy learn new skills? So powerful. This interruption actually made the resentment in her heart lessen, and turned into surprise and confusion towards Luzioki. Zhang Heng touched the shield and felt that his body was getting stronger. He couldn't help but give Luzioki a thumbs up and showed his white teeth in approval. This was the second time Xiaoyan teamed up with Luzioki. She was shocked by the sudden buff blessing. She felt that her attributes had increased significantly, and she suddenly understood why so many Yuehui-level adventurers had treated Luzioki in the past. She is so enthusiastic. After all, who can resist a boss who majors in buff? It's a pity that her understanding was obviously wrong. Because Luzioki won respect not by buffs, but by hard power. After adding the buff, Luzioki frowned and took the lead to step forward, raising his sword with both hands and making a parrying gesture. The three people behind him didn't have time to be confused. Just listen to swish. 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 Several strange rays of light flashed, ding, ding, ding. Continuous collisions sounded on the dagger raised by Luzioki. Several undiscovered monsters hidden underground suddenly appeared and attacked Luzioki together. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 129. The monster's limbs collided with the almost invisible dagger blade of Luzioki. Then the monster's bodies trembled slightly, their limbs raised high, with a strange posture, which seemed to be caused by Luzioki's attack. The dagger was shocked and went into a state of stiffness. Xiaoyan was the strongest among the remaining three, and with the help of Yuehui-level eyesight, she could clearly see the appearance of these monsters at this moment. They look like aliens, with their bodies covered in silvery gray, which is very difficult to detect against the background of the night sky. I found a special shaped picture, which gives me a slight sense of immersion. The limbs are slightly slender, the hind legs are thick and powerful, with one more anti-joint than a human leg, and the front claws are extremely sharp, shining with a cold light. It was this limb that had just intersected with Luzioki's dagger. The most terrifying thing is its head, which is huge, pointed, and streamlined. The proportion of the entire torso and head is very uncoordinated, but it seems to have a different kind of beauty that makes people feel chilling. Just based on this figure, you can imagine it lurking underground, crouching with its legs bent and its forelimbs gripping the ground, as if it could transform into a cannonball and bombard the enemy at any time. It is terrifying and unforgettable. Provincial description, majestic appearance, with strange bones running through the top of his head. The wool is clear and unpredictable. Drink, Luzioki exclaimed, raised his sword with his backhand, and struck the 19 continents with the sword. Under this stunning sword light, these monsters didn't even have room to resist, and they turned into white light and disappeared. Click 2 materials fell from the place where the monster disappeared, some red and one blue. It is the material of this copy, the dimensional breath. Because there will be no other drops from this copy, and the materials are bound and cannot be traded. It should be mentioned here that Luzioki, who knew that she was going to team up with Xiaoyan and the others, had already turned off the automatic pickup function in advance to avoid the oolong incident of taking all the loot for herself. What kind of skill is this? Xiaoyan was a little stunned. It seemed like an ordinary upward move, and even the unique halo of the skill could not be seen, but it ended up killing several monsters in a row. Even though she knew that Luzioki's strength was abnormal, she never expected that he was so abnormal. It's just a normal attack. Luzioki held a sword flower, put the dagger back into the scabbard, smiled, and explained to Xiaoyan, as we all know, damage neither occurs nor disappears out of thin air. It just transferred from the monster's hand to my sword. So strictly speaking, I didn't kill them, but they committed suicide. I call this theory the law of conservation of damage, and this method is called the star shift. Xiaoyan. Zhao Sueking. Zhang Heng. The damage conservation law of Shent Miao. Your cup is too abrupt and not smooth at all. Xiaoyan rolled her eyes at him, turned around and said to Zhao Sueking and Zhang Heng, watch your steps. It seems that these monsters are special mutants that are good at lurking underground to attack targets. They have all read the information and know that the monsters in this copy are all-dimensional creatures, but they are divided into Type I, Type II, Type III. There are also some dimensional creatures with strange abilities that look very different from their own kind, and are called special mutations. The 4 of them were at a disadvantage because they had not learned the detection skills and had no way to detect the monster's attributes and characteristics in advance. Only Luzioki was fearless. What monster can block his 10,000 swords return to the sect? Joke. He is so brave. Zhang Heng pointed to the drop on the ground. Xiaoqi, your dimensional breath. No, it's your dimensional aura. Luzioki smiled slightly. You take it first, I'm not in a hurry, just give it to me last. Luzioki said, I only need one portion of each kind, you can do whatever you want. Then I'm not welcome. Xiaoyan glanced at him and made sure that he was not talking politely to everyone. Then she walked up to pick up the materials and muttered, it just so happens that my equipment is a bit out of tune. It's reached the next level. She is not going to change the equipment anymore, because it is really expensive to change it. How could she, a poor teacher, have so much money to change her clothes? So I made do with my previous equipment, reshuffled the entry attributes, and strengthened it, and I was still able to make do with it. The most common material dropped in this dungeon is dimensional breath, blue, which is used to cleanse entries. Next is the dimensional breath, red, which is used to strengthen the entry. Finally, there is the rarest dimensional breath, green, which is used to resonate with equipment. The proportion is about 75%, 24%, and 1%. Luzioki's sword produced 1 red and 1 blue. He could only say that the add 50% drop rate entry of the amulet was YYDS. A few people made some repairs and continued to move forward fully armed. There is a valley in front of them. The walls on both sides are steep and difficult to climb. After discussion, the four people decided to go deep into the valley to find out. Along the way, they met a dozen special species lurking underground and preparing for sneak attacks, but none of them escaped Luzioki's perception, and they turned into white light and passed away under the forced vibration of the knife. Only fragments of a few dimensional auras were left. Several people were surprised at the beginning and gradually got used to it. Especially Zhao Sueking. She discovered that the sky seemed to advance by leaps and bounds after a period of time, and his strength would undergo earth-shaking changes. In the previous battles, no matter who the enemy was, he unleashed his sword energy boldly. Now, all he had to do was raise his hand and strike with his backhand sword, and he easily dispatched the monster. Needless to say, the strength must have risen by a big margin. After walking dozens of steps, I suddenly became enlightened. In front of it is a place similar to a lair. Several huge lighting stones are inlaid on the cliffs on both sides of the lair, illuminating the scene inside at a glance. Densely packed dimensional creatures are surging in the lair, and it is impossible to see for a while. Clear the specific quantity. They enjoy light very much and seem to have the ability to absorb this light to grow. Because according to Luzioki's observation, the closer the dimensional creature is to the lighting, the bigger it becomes and its aura becomes more powerful. What do you say about this wave? Zhang Heng set up his shield, looked at the situation ahead with a cautious expression, and asked in a low voice. Leave me alone. Luzioki did her duty and planned to take the lead. Wait a minute, Zhao Sueking stopped him. If you take action, nothing will happen. Let us try it ourselves. Zhang Heng and I take action this time. Teacher Xiao will help us hold off the battle. You will watch from the end. She glanced at everyone and explained. Zhao Sueking's reason is also very clear. On the one hand, she downloaded the dungeon for the materials, and on the other hand, she also wanted to hone her own strength. Luzioki was just a guarantee she was looking for. If Luzioki had to rely on Luzioki to solve everything and she would just sit back and enjoy the results, then the meaning of training would be completely lost. What if Luzioki is gone next time, like when monsters attack the city, and she faces these monsters alone? She doesn't want to be a vase with nothing but beauty. You know, she, Zhao Sueking, is also a unique genius. Global copy. My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 130. Luzioki felt confident and nodded in agreement. With the Holy Guardian here, even if Zhao Sueking and the others accidentally overturned the car, he would still be sure to bring all three of them back intact. Zhang Heng and Zhao Sueking have similar thoughts. As a shield tank, he has no value at all in the current combination, which makes his sense of existence very weak. He also wants to grow up step by step in the battle, instead of holding up a shield and watching the show from behind like a waste. Although he also understands that the gap between him and Luzioki has become an insurmountable gap. But this is not a reason to stop him from moving forward step by step. Without inner perseverance, who would give up their gorgeous skills and choose simple and unpretentious guardianship? Xiao Yan, on the other hand, felt that she could not lose her last dignity as a teacher in front of Luzioki. Even though the number of monsters really made her feel a little numb, she still nodded and agreed. As an adventurer, you will naturally not lack the courage to take risks. How could she, as a class teacher, back down from something that even her students dared to do? Moreover, she is full of passion and has been eager to fight. Since Zhao Sueking dared to bring it up, she was certainly not unprepared. She pulled the two of them together and discussed the countermeasures in whispers. Then start preparing traps on the ground. Naturally, all these props were provided by Zhao Sueking, this damn rich man. Magic trap. After activation, enemies within range will be imprisoned in place. Causes a certain amount of magic damage to all enemies within range every second. Each attack is forced to consume 1 point of durability. Trapped in a horse trap. After activation, a huge pit will appear in place. Enemies passing by are forced to fall into the pit. The faster the enemy, the higher the damage they receive. Every time you fall into an enemy, 1 point of durability is consumed. Flip the pegboard. It will hide on the ground after activation. Enemies who step on the trap will be attacked by nail boards, causing huge physical damage and negative effects, debuffs such as slowing down, bleeding, poisoning, etc. Good guy. As expected of a rich woman. Just be prepared. Lu Zioqi agreed after reading it and silently gave a thumbs up to Zhao Xueqing, who was working hard to arrange the scene. The originally peaceful dimensional creatures were lying in their nests enjoying the light bath. They flapped their tails and squirmed and turned over so that their bodies could more fully absorb the light. It was supposed to be a peaceful and beautiful day, but suddenly I heard a shout. 3 ultimate slashes. 3 sword energy instantly shattered the lighting stone they used to maintain the light. Kaka. The lighting stone suddenly lost all its energy and turned into grey-brown stones scattered on the ground. This accident happened so unexpectedly that all the dimensional creatures were stunned. The next moment they reacted, they collectively rioted. They all rushed towards the source of the sound, looking for the culprit. But Xiao Yan, who unleashed this attack, had already seen the opportunity and slipped away. The dimensional creatures who searched everywhere to no avail fell into a frenzy. At this time, they suddenly heard a powerful and deep voice spread throughout the audience. What are you looking at? It's here. Forced taunt. Suddenly all the monsters turned their heads and saw Zhang Heng standing high in the distance, with a face that was a bit rough but also a little bit honest. Famous. His eyes were red. The eyes of all dimensional creatures turned red. After checking his eyes, this is the person he wants to kill. They let out an unpleasant and harsh roar and rushed towards Zhang Heng one after another. The sound was huge, like a flood bursting from a dike, with unstoppable momentum and surging momentum. As a result, the dimensional creatures had just rushed out of their lair, and what greeted them was a frost storm that they had been waiting for a long time. A biting icy hurricane mixed with hard ice crystal snow swept over the scene. The dimensional creatures rushing in front were immediately affected by the ice storm, their movements were hindered, and their speed was greatly reduced. However, the dimensional creatures behind them rushed forward without any precautions or worries. In an instant, it collided with the front and rolled into a ball, causing a serious stampede. At the same time, the snowflakes turned into cold and ruthless sharp blades and cut towards them. Some slightly fragile dimensional creatures were collided, beaten, trampled, and severely injured in this man-made accident, and then they turned into white light and disappeared in the dense attack that followed. But most of the dimensional creatures were quite strong. They struggled to stand up from the ground, rushed out of the frost storm, and began to charge towards the figures in the distance. The speed is getting faster and faster. Faster and faster. I can take my revenge at a glance, pounce on these hateful humans and tear them to pieces in retaliation for them smashing my lighting stone and injuring my limbs. As a result, I suddenly felt empty under my feet. Only then did I realize that ravines appeared out of thin air on the otherwise fine ground. Caught off guard, they hit the hard barrier hard, purple blood splashed everywhere, and countless white lights rose again. Many dimensional creatures that were lucky enough to survive fell into the pit along the barrier, and what greeted them were radiating spikes and sawtooths. Even so, some dimensional creatures still had several large holes pierced through their bodies, and they were still struggling to escape. But the next wave of dimensional creatures has arrived. They naturally saw these ravines and originally planned to use their excellent jumping ability to directly jump over this trap. However, as soon as they jumped up, there seemed to be suction forces coming out of the pit, forcibly changing their trajectory and making them follow in their footsteps. They fell into the trap and hit the former hard, and suddenly white lights rose up again. There were also many dimensional creatures who saw the bad opportunity and were lucky enough to stop before the trap. However, before they had time to rejoice, they were hit by dimensional creatures that rushed up from behind and did not see the situation clearly. It was like a series of rear-end collisions, pushing the dimensional creatures in front into a trap. For a moment, the scene was extremely tragic, and the dimensional creatures fell into the trap like dumplings, turning into white light and dissipating. However, the durability of the trap is limited after all. After paying a heavy price, the trap finally lost its original effectiveness. Countless dimensional creatures jumped over the trap and continued to rush forward. There were also a small number of dimensional creatures that survived the catastrophe and climbed out of the pit, struggling to crawl forward. Even if it means death, it will take a bite of this despicable human being. But what greeted them was a more cruel flipping nail board. The dimensional creature rushing in front never expected that just by stepping on the air, a steel plate with a dense row of nails would pop out. It stunned him, smashing his head and splitting his sternum. Broken, gutted, and rotten. The key is that there is a strange power attached to it, which prevents his wounds from healing and spurts out blood. His whole body is green and there are obvious signs of poisoning. He is even more weak and moves slowly, like a beaten man. Target. Zhao Xueqing naturally would not let go of such a good opportunity, and used ice power to transform various ice blade spikes to stab the dimensional creatures fiercely. The power of ice went back and forth between the dimensional creatures that crossed the pit, rolling them up. Bursts of white light. Lu Zhaoqi glanced at Zhao Xueqing, whose face was a little pale due to excessive consumption and who was gulping down the recovery potion. I have to admit that compared to the previous time in the Tower of Confusion, Zhao Xueqing's progress is indeed very obvious. Whether it is the use of skills, combat skills, or tactical wisdom, they have all been greatly improved. Of course, the more important point is that she is really rich. Whether it's trap props, skill upgrades, or lots of recovery potions. Which one is inseparable from money ability? This is obviously an RMB soldier. Snort. This damn Kryptonian. Turn over the table. Fortunately, I am a cheat player. Akimbo.